Now, a lot of you are excited to get your summer trail cameras out, and I think there's a good strategy in a few different ways for summer trail cameras. What's your purpose for putting a summer trail camera out? I really want intel, and a lot of that intel has to do with what bucks are alive and what they look like this year. A lot of the bucks that we're going after are bucks that we've been familiar with, a lot of them seen in person over the last 2 to 3 years. And that being said, as long as we know they're alive and what they look like this year, we know we're going to hunt those bucks in the fall. It's not that I don't want to get fall pictures, but summertime to me is more of a verification time frame. And at the same time, we want to get pictures and we want to set up and see what's going on at our stand location. So I'm going to talk about 3 spots that I like to hang a camera and watch summer bucks, and how that relates to my fall hunt, because ultimately I want that intel to actually help me in the fall, and to be useful. I really like, just getting pictures, and I love looking at the deer. I love looking at all the critters. It's amazing how many you get on trail cameras, but I really want this intel to mean something. And so we have a reveal right behind Dylan right here. And in this spot right here, you can see the strip of perennial we have right here. This is our perennial plot power through Pure Wildlife blends, but it has clover, birchfoot trefoil, chicory, and alfalfa in it. It's a really good mixture. And it has some rocket weed in here. So we'll mow this, and eventually it gets thick enough we get rid of this rocket weed. You got to be on top of it so it doesn't turn into a bunch of seed. But the cool thing is, you can see with this, I mean, this has only been mowed one time. We mow this, it gets a lot thicker. And you can see how thick it is already. It's starting to look pretty good, but this clover and this blend gets a lot thicker, almost matted. And what's really cool about that is you have these weeds that come up and they get no sunlight. So even if they turn to seed, those seeds germinate on top of the soil. We're not disking this up anymore, ripping up the soil. In fact, we never have on any of our plots out here. The seed sits on the soil, or any other kind of weed seed. It gets completely shaded out by this thick blend, and it doesn't allow this to grow. And this will not be a thin blend or thinned out at all until it gets into October, November. It starts getting to frost and freeze, and the deer keep biting and eating, and it's not replaced. And so I love a spot like this because those bucks are back in here. We have a lot of bedding areas created back here. We have open timber, so there's good buck movement, and then there's these big alfalfa hay fields out here in corn. So those deer are naturally staying in the woods, and then they're coming through a nice lush pinpoint spot like this and moving out to the fields. You can kind of see out here where we had the thoughts of rotating these two, but this out here, it's killed and ready for broadcasting this blend. We'll broadcast this blend. We call it our spring perennial drought attack, and it's the same blend, but it has an annual rye in it, so that it acts as a cover crop, and it aids and actually acts as a nurse crop during the summertime, helps fight against drought. We'll put that over on that side, but it's got the same perennial base in it, and that's what we want for this area. So very pinpoint area, which is why we have a blind right over there. You have a redneck right there. We want to see these bucks as we're cruising through here and moving out to the fields during the summertime, purely buck ID. But at the same time, this perennial blend is setting up and establishing a pattern of use of these mature bucks, so that when we want to sit in that blind and watch that same movement during the fall, they've already hit this. Even if the mature buck hits this 5 times during the summer, he knows it's here. It's established a pattern of use, and he's a lot more likely to come through during the fall, which is why we use a perennial blend here in this spot for actual fall hunting. But it makes for a great spot to see what bucks are using this area for the fall. And so they get their picture in the summer, great spot for that. And then during the fall, we expect those patterns to persist. In fact, they strengthen a lot too, because a lot of times during the fall, the weeds are dying, the alfalfa gets frosted out, stemmed, there's nothing left. and then you're left with this pure green mix. The alfalfa in this mix will get frosted out, the clover will not. The chicory is kind of bitter, but it stays around towards the end. They'll eat it then. The bird's foot trefoil is great for the damp soil in these areas, so there's a purpose with all of this. And then it stays green into November. It's green under the snow, and they'll eat it till it's gone and well past. So we start to see that pattern right now. Now another spot, and this is my favorite during the summertime, is getting back in the woods. And we have a lot of water hole locations, mock scrapes, and so I like those spots where we can get into some of our prime time, late October, November hunting setups, and we don't expect a lot of activity in those locations all summer long. So if you're concerned about battery life, batteries in these reveals, even with putting these on a mock scrape and getting a few pictures a day, we'll find those batteries lasting up to a year sometimes, but certainly even with active use, we're getting 4 or 5 months. And with the solar management, we can get a year or more and just keep taking pictures as long as you're out in the sun. But bottom line is, I want to see that camera at my hunting setups. Even if we get a glimpse of that mature buck 4 times during the summer, we know for sure he'll be back during the hunting season when he's shown that pattern of use and he's established that movement, and you feel like you have him. It's kind of cool. So that's a number 2 spot. I want to be back in those wood spots in the actual hunting locations. And a lot of people think, you even hear talk sometimes that cameras spook deer. When the infrared cameras, when they have those flashing red bulbs at night, deer don't like those. They don't like it at all. Deer can see that color of red. People say, well, they can't see red and green, but they sure can. So they see those red bulbs, and especially on video, they'll walk over to that camera, look at it, and you never get their picture again. We like to put our cameras mostly 6 feet high, but sometimes we'll put them down at knee level because it seems like they're not looking down at them either. So they're either looking up, they're not looking up, they're not looking down, they're more in this head level area. We really like it backed up against weeds, other brush, so there's a good backdrop. It's just not this camera on a post sticking out where it's completely silhouetted like over here. This is where you don't want something. So when we put these cameras back in a hunting spot, we want a tree often on the side of it to cut its profile. Most of the time we're hanging at about 6 feet high as opposed to down knee level or lower, although that works sometimes. We're concerned about the cover behind it. We want it on a tree wider than the camera. So if we're back in those woods, those intimate spots, we hang cameras at every stand location that we've shot bucks at. We have that ability to, whether we have a camera there or not. And I've been doing that for decades. It's not the cameras that spook deer. Look at some of the cameras when they're out in the open. It's open box. You put it out in the field. Just a simple test you can do. Take that box, put it right out here in the open. Watch every deer that comes by it during the daylight, looks right at it. If you have a nice blackout camera like we use with the reveal cameras, then when those deer walk through, they don't see it at night. They don't look at it. They're not smelling it. They don't hear it. And they can't see the box. They can't see the bulbs because they're blacked out. They can't see the box, so they don't look at it at night. But every deer that comes through during the day, they look at. That just shows you that they see that square and they don't like it. That's why we hide our rednecks. There's actually a layer. You can see how high that old switchgrass gets. We have a box elder cut in front of it. We have the trees behind it. It's hidden back there. The deer don't look at it. It's the same with trail cameras. And think about it. If they notice this, they'll notice that. So when you have them at your stand locations, it's you that spooks deer out of that stand location, not the camera. We don't use gloves, anything on the camera, because the deer has to literally go up to smell that fingerprint on the camera. The scent doesn't blow from your fingerprint on the camera to the deer. They have to actually go up and smell it. And so we have our cameras off the beaten path. We're watching mock scrapes in front of the stand location, water holes. Bottom line is they don't spook deer at all. It's people that spook deer, not being careful. So I've been careful with them for decades. Shoot a lot of target bucks with cameras. And then finally during the summer, completely illegal around here, so we don't do it in any ways, but putting a camera over a mineral. Used to do that in the UP in Michigan when it was legal there. I'd have 4 sites and rotate them. But I really like those minerals during the summertime. It can be a great look at your bucks. There's a lot of scientific evidence to talk about that minerals don't help deer at all when they're growing their antlers, but whatever you believe, It's a great spot for it to hang a trail camera during the summertime. So really good mineral locations. All that being said, you always need to verify with your summer locations, can this pattern match up to fall? For example, we have open woods bedding here, and we have really thick cut, hinge cut, and total cut, big bedding areas back here. So during the fall, they'll bed in that thick stuff, the winter stuff, the thick high stem count, and then during the summer, they're down here in the open shaded timber right next to each other. They feed through this. This is a pattern that can persist into the fall. And then out there, they have alfalfa, but there's also corn. So they'll continue that same pattern and live in the same spot right next to each other. It's not every place that they can do that. So the pictures we get here during the summer of a buck coming through, it's likely that same buck will be back during the fall. Some of those bachelor groups break apart. One of those bucks will stick here, and if you saw him here last year all the time, he'll probably be the buck that'll be back. Stand locations. We might get a lot of pictures out here during the summertime or video. We're not going to get as much back in the stand location, but when those bucks come through that location, if everything matches up for fall, meaning it's relating to fall food, fall cover, fall movement, cruising lines go like this parallel to the field edge during the summertime, not back and forth. So in some of those intimate spots in the woods, that pattern repeats itself during the fall. We don't need a lot of pictures during the summer to know that a certain buck's going to be back on there or is used to it. The minerals are, however, if we put minerals off to the side, no matter if it related to a summer or fall pattern, they'll find those minerals and hit it. That's not necessarily reflective of those bucks. The bucks are live. You get to pattern. At least you get to see them, identify them for the fall. But that same pattern might not persist. So you can see, we can't put minerals out here anyways, but my two favorite out of those three locations is a setup like this that might persist into the fall, and then certainly back by our stand locations in an intimate hidey hole with a mock scrape and water hole. We love seeing that because when we see those bucks come through and we get to identify them more mid to late June, it's early June right now, then you could probably kill that buck in that location back in the summertime, even if you're not hanging trail cameras during the hunt in that location. So those are my three favorite spots. I hope they match up with some of yours, but especially as it relates to fall and those fall movements, fall patterns, identification. Those are the places I want to hang a trail camera at during the summertime, and get to know those bucks and what they're going to look like for this fall. It's Monday, and that means big shipment time for seeds. We have a lot of orders over the weekend, and Daryl in New York, he bought a lot of seed. In fact, a lot of this pallet is his. We've shipped to 48 states so far. We haven't shipped any to Alaska and Hawaii, but Daryl, we have some extra goodies coming your way. We appreciate it. We'll try to do that every week too. So we really thank you guys. This is that time of year. We have lots of seed going out the door. Wes is working hard behind me, getting that out, and we try to get that out the next day after your order.
Perfect.